Hey, welcome back to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast by Ohio State fans, for Ohio State fans from the West Coast. I'm your host, Zach Moore. Today is Sunday, September 29th, 2024, and thank you for joining me while I talk to myself into this microphone about Ohio State's 38-7 road win over Michigan State in East Lansing last night in the Buckeyes Big Ten opener. Let's jump right into it. I thought there was a lot to like about the performance last night, but why don't we start with the nitpicky stuff, get that out of the way first, then we can move into the real positive stuff. Now, for the second game in a row, it was another mixed bag in the first half from the Buckeye defense. The Michigan State offense was able to drive the ball deep into Ohio State territory on 3 different first half possessions, and in between they took advantage of a Jordan Turner interception of Will Howard to score their only touchdown of the game. Now, on their first and only possession of the first quarter, Michigan State went 55 yards on 7 plays. That drive ended at the Ohio State 20 on 4th and 1. There was a great stop by Cody Simon of Aiden Childs on that 4th and 1 play. It was a great play both by Simon and Ty Hamilton. Hamilton submarined the center on that play. I think he took out a couple of Michigan State defensive linemen. Simon goes over the top to stuff Childs behind the line of scrimmage. So a really nice play. But Michigan State had a lot of success most of that drive, moving the ball all the way down to the Ohio State 20. Then on their next possession of the game in the second quarter, Michigan State went 64 yards on only 5 plays. Now that drive ended at the Ohio State 11 when Jordan Hancock stripped Jack Velling at the end of a 26-yard reception. The ball was recovered by Sonny Styles to end that scoring threat. I thought Hancock really saved Styles' bacon on that play because Styles got beat pretty badly by Velling on the play. He got to be the hero to recover the fumble, but Velling actually really torched him. And then on Michigan State's third possession of the half, that actually started in the red zone after Jordan Turner picked off Will Howard to set Michigan State up at the Ohio State 12-yard line. On the next play, Aiden Childs would hit Jerron Glover for an easy 12-yard touchdown pass. The Ohio State secondary was caught, I thought, in a mistake with their coverages. Davison Igbinosun was playing way too soft on the play. Glover was basically untouched until he reached the goal line. That was not a great look by the Ohio State secondary, which has otherwise played very well this season. Finally, on their fourth possession of the half, Michigan State went 59 yards on 9 plays. That drive ended at the Ohio State 16-yard line on another forced fumble by the Buckeye defense. Lathan Ransom punched the ball away from Aiden Childs on the play. Jack Sawyer fell on it. Looked like Ohio State might have gotten away with a face mask on Childs on that play, so they were a little lucky to get away with it and retain possession. Look, I think if you're a glass half full kind of person, you'll credit the Ohio State defense for making big plays at the end of those 3 sustained drives by the Spartans. 2 forced fumbles and a turnover on downs. I mean, those are just the kind of plays I've been screaming about, that Ohio State needs to make more of. So give them credit, right? Now, the glass half empty view is that a better offense, like Oregon's, for example, likely would have finished all of those drives with touchdowns. And look, a similar slow start in Autzen Stadium on October 12th could put the Buckeyes in a big hole that would be really tough to dig out of, even with that explosive offense. Now, it wasn't until very late in the first half that the Ohio State defense forced their first 3 and out of the game. That came with about 90 seconds to play in the half, and I actually thought that's kind of where the tide turned for the Ohio State defense. They were much better after that series. JT Tuimoloau sacked Aiden Childs for a 6-yard loss on that drive. The Buckeyes would get the ball back and would put together a 44-second scoring drive, punctuated by a spectacular one-handed touchdown catch by Jeremiah Smith. That put the Buckeyes up 24-7, and it effectively drove a stake into the hearts of the Spartans, and the game was pretty much over after that. Now, I think Tyleik Williams, through his absence for the second game in a row, is proving to be an even more valuable asset to this defense than we thought before the season started. Williams was in uniform last night, but he did not play. Ryan Day said in the postgame that similar to Donovan Jackson's situation earlier this season, they're being extra cautious with Williams. They want him at 100% when he does eventually return. But look, man, it is obvious. Williams is the fulcrum of the Ohio State defensive front. And I think, it's easy to point to his absence as the primary reason for the early struggles for the Silver Bullets, both last night and last week against Marshall. The pressure that he creates up the middle is so disruptive. I think it makes everyone's job around him much easier. He is absolutely critical to the success of the Ohio State defense, and they are going to need a healthy Tyleik Williams starting next week against a devastating Iowa rushing attack that's averaging 6 yards a carry. Hawkeye running back Caleb Johnson is a beast. Johnson is currently second nationally in rushing, averaging 171 yards a game. He averages 8.3 yards per carry. It is absolutely critical Tyleik Williams is back in the starting lineup for the Buckeyes next Saturday. I also think the Ohio State linebackers are going to have to be infinitely better against Iowa than they were last night. Now, while Cody Simon had that great fourth down stop on Aiden Childs in the first quarter, he finished with a dreadful tackling grade of 32.1 according to PFF. Sonny Styles and C.J. Hicks did not grade out well either. Styles finished with an overall grade of 58.1 and a coverage grade of 42.9. As I mentioned earlier, he was beaten badly in coverage by Michigan State tight end Jack Velling. And the bad news for Styles is he's going to have a much stiffer test next Saturday against Iowa tight end Luke Lachey, who is an excellent pass-catching tight end. C.J. Hicks finished with a grade of 56.7. He was not great yesterday either. Now, the only linebacker that graded out well was, guess who? Arvell Reese. In only 19 snaps, Reese finished with an overall grade of 75.6 and a tackling grade of 79. One would think Reese will get a lot more than 19 snaps next Saturday against Iowa, because I think it's very likely the Buckeyes are going to play with 3 linebackers most of that game, against the Iowa power run game. Reese will almost certainly be one of those 3 linebackers. Now, PFF says the Buckeyes only missed 10 tackles last night. To me, it seemed they missed a lot more than that. And the poor tackling grades for many of the starters would also suggest that. Lathan Ransom and Cody Simon had tackling grades in the 20s. Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock had tackling grades in the 30s. And there were some reserves who played a lot of snaps last night that also got really bad tackling grades, including Kenyatta Jackson and Taiwan Malone, who graded out in the 20s. And Caden McDonald, who finished with a tackling grade of 38.7. As a team, Ohio State finished with their worst tackling grade of the season so far, with a grade of 49.1. Again, they're going to have to be way, way better than that starting next week against Iowa. Okay, so now that we had the negative stuff out of the way, let's talk about what actually did go well. After everything I just said about the defense, the Silver Bullets still managed to limit Michigan State to only 248 yards of total offense, only 60 total yards in the second half. They limited Sparty to 2 yards per carry in the run game. They registered 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. They forced 3 turnovers. Caleb Downs was awesome last night. Now, Downs is starting to stack up elite performances one on top of the other now. And he's starting to fulfill all that promise. Now, he led the Buckeyes in tackles with 6 last night. He was their top-graded defender with a grade of 79.5. And in our preview pod, Paige talked about how well Caden Curry has been playing this season. He was good again last night. In 19 snaps, Curry led the defense with 4 pressures. He finished with the defense's highest grade for pass rush with a grade of 82.3. And despite his poor tackling grade, Jordan Hancock finished as the defense's second highest graded defender with a grade of 79. He finished with a coverage grade of 83.5, which led all Buckeyes. And of course, he had the big forced fumble on Jack Velling to kill that would-be Sparty scoring drive in the first half. Look, through 4 games, Ohio State is second nationally in total defense and defensive yards per play. They're number 1 in scoring defense. They're third nationally in rush defense, and they're 9th against the pass. Bigger tests are certainly coming for the Silver Bullets. We know this, but the early returns, not too shabby. Okay, let's take a look at the Ohio State offense. Now, the first thought for me that comes to mind when I think of the Ohio State offense is pick your poison. 483 yards of total offense last night, 298 through the air, 185 on the ground. Most of that production came in only 3 quarters of play because the first team offense did not play in the fourth quarter. Jeremiah Smith was magnificent once again. He scored on a 19-yard reverse in the second quarter on a beautifully designed play by Chip Kelly. Man, Kelly was in his bag again last night. Then Smith made two spectacular one-handed grabs just before halftime, including a 17-yard touchdown pass from Devin Brown with 29 seconds to play that just broke the Spartans' spirit. But Emeka Egbuka actually led the Buckeyes in receiving with 7 catches on 11 targets for 96 yards. That included a 33-yard catch and run for a touchdown on 4th and 5 on Ohio State's first possession in the third quarter. It was a beautiful throw by Will Howard. Michigan State, I thought, actually had good coverage on the play, but Howard put the ball where only Egbuka could catch it, and he hit him in stride so that Egbuka could finish the play. Carnell Tate continues to be a player for this offense who maximizes every opportunity that comes his way. 3 catches for 52 yards for Tate. On Ohio State's second play from scrimmage, Tate had a beautiful 29-yard catch and run that dug the Buckeyes out of a 2nd and 14 hole, which I thought really set the tone for the offense that would carry throughout the whole game. Now, Ohio State didn't need a lot from the running game last night, but Travion Henderson averaged almost 10 yards per carry. Henderson also had several huge blocks in pass protection, including one on the 4th down touchdown pass to Emeka Egbuka in the third quarter that allowed Will Howard the extra time to complete that pass. The blocking by Henderson in pass protection was not the first time we've seen him do that. The great blocking that the Buckeyes are getting from receivers down the field in the running game, it's special, folks. I mean, think about this. With everything Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka did with the ball in their hands last night, they also finish with blocking grades of 80 and 76.8, respectively. Quinshon Judkins, he finished with a pass blocking grade of 78.3. So, look, you've got star players who are leading by example, making unselfish plays without the ball in their hands. I mean, folks, this is how championships are won. Now, I thought Will Howard was solid last night. He mostly played well, but his interception was a very poor decision. That was thrown into double coverage. Howard had another throw in the end zone, also into double coverage, that probably should have been picked. That throw, he was trying to force into Jeremiah Smith. Howard didn't seem to see the safety on that play. Now, Howard also had to leave the game for one play after taking a shot to his sternum on the first in the first half. That was kind of his welcome to Big Ten football moment. That was actually the play that Devin Brown hit Jeremiah Smith for the one-handed touchdown catch. Howard finished 21 of 31 for 2 touchdown passes and the interception. He also scored on a 6-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. He was very good, but I think even he would tell you he'll need to be better starting next Saturday against Iowa. Now, the PFF grades don't really show it, but I thought the offensive line overall played well in this game. Michigan State came into last night 14th nationally in total defense, 18th in defensive yards per play. They'd been making a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. Sparty was tied for 2nd nationally in sacks. They were 8th nationally in tackles for loss. But last night, they did not record a sack and finished with only 3 tackles for loss. I thought Will Howard had all day to throw on most of his pass attempts. I think the offensive line is playing really well this season. Now, they've got a big test in front of them next Saturday against Iowa, but the 0-sack performance last night against the top 20 defense, I don't think is anything to sneeze at. So overall, I thought there was a lot to like on both sides of the ball last night. You're on the road against the quality Big Ten opponent. The Buckeyes covered. The first team was on the bench by the start of the fourth quarter. You were even able to get Julian Sayin several series in the fourth quarter. Look, mission accomplished. Now the Buckeyes head into the meat of their schedule, and we're going to find out just how good this team really is. Iowa in the shoe next Saturday, at Oregon, another week off, then home against a vastly improved Nebraska squad, followed by a trip to Happy Valley to play Penn State on November 2nd. So buckle up, Buckeye fans. The next 5 weeks ain't going to be easy, but I think they're going to be a lot of fun. I expect the Buckeyes to play really, really well. All right. That's going to do it for me. Check your feeds on Thursday evening for a preview of the Iowa game from Paige, Chad, and myself. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and go Bucks. You've been listening to the South Stands, a Buckeye football podcast. Follow us on X at South_Stands.